Hey everyone! Welcome to the Bold and Beautiful 24. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Bold and Beautiful, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Grace scams Bill for $1 million. You never think something like this could happen. But then again, this is LA. And if you followed the Forresters, Spencers, and everyone orbiting their wild world, you know nothing is ever really off the table. Especially not when lives are on the line, and people are backed into corners. This time, it started with hope, the kind that's always just out of reach, and a promise of a miracle. But it ended with deception, $1 million vanishing into thin air, and more questions than answers. Grace Buckingham, a name that doesn't usually cause ripples, just set off a tidal wave that could drown Bill Spencer, and she did it with a scalpel, a smile, and a secret. The week began in panic. Liam Spencer's situation was already dire, not just because he'd survived a bullet meant for someone else, but because doctors had discovered something far worse, an inoperable brain mass. Fatal, they said. Untreatable. That was the word everyone used until Grace came into the picture. Bill Spencer was spiraling. You could see it in his eyes, the way he clutched his son's hand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He'd already lost time, years, really, caught up in battles with his sons, his business, and his own demons. Now, with Liam's life hanging by a thread, all of that regret hit him like a freight train. And Grace. She stepped right into that vulnerability like she'd been planning it all along. At first, no one really questioned her intentions. Grace is a doctor, after all, polished, intelligent, and quietly confident. But there was something about how she hovered a little too long at Liam's bedside. Something about the way she watched Bill, not just as a concerned physician, but like she was calculating something. Still, Bill didn't notice. How could he? His son was dying. When Grace pulled him aside and whispered that there might be an off-the-record option, something risky, unconventional, but possibly life-saving, Bill didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. "Whatever it costs," he said. "I'll pay it." And that's when the $1 million came into play. She told him about another surgeon. A genius, apparently. Someone who could do what others wouldn't dare attempt. But this miracle man wouldn't step foot in a hospital. He worked privately, underground, under the radar, for the right price. Bill didn't blink. He wired the money without asking for credentials, background checks, or a second opinion. That alone should have raised red flags. But Bill was a desperate father, and desperate men don't ask questions. They just hope. And yet, when the day of the surgery came, something didn't sit right. Grace, who up until now had insisted she was only there to assist, suddenly took the lead. There was no mystery surgeon walking through the door, no fresh face scrubbing in. It was Grace, gloved up, steady, and shockingly calm, who made the first incision on Liam's skull. Fans watching this unfold on Bold and the Beautiful were stunned. Not only because Grace performed a highly experimental and likely illegal surgery in a rented surgical suite, but because it seemed like she had no intention of bringing in that second surgeon at all. Was there ever a mystery doctor? Or was that just part of the story she fed Bill to secure her payout? And then came the phone. During a quiet moment, while Liam was sedated and Bill waited outside the room, Grace checked her phone. The screen lit up with a notification, $1 million received. She stared at it, and something flickered across her face. Relief. Guilt. Satisfaction. It was impossible to tell. This moment, subtle but chilling, changed everything. Because suddenly, this didn't feel like a medical miracle. It felt like a heist. Let's rewind just a bit. Before the surgery, Grace had made it clear to Bill and Liam that this couldn't be done at the hospital. Too many eyes, too many risks, too many people who would say no. She even insisted they keep it quiet, no telling Steffi, Hope, or Ridge. That, in hindsight, was her first major red flag. But she covered her bases well. She had Liam sign off, she had Bill sign off, and she technically followed the rules, barely. Still, what followed wasn't just bending the rules. It was shattering them. The operation happened in a surgical center, one of those private facilities that look clean and professional enough to lull you into a false sense of security. But let's be honest, it wasn't a hospital, and no one besides Bill, Grace, and the center's admin team knew what was really going on. Once the surgery was done, Grace told Bill it was a success. She used clinical terms, gave him a rundown of how she removed the tumor, and even mentioned post-op expectations. But there was one thing missing: proof. No MRI. No third-party confirmation. Just her word. And in this world, especially when $1 million changes hands in silence, someone's word isn't enough. Here's where it gets more complicated. Grace's past isn't spotless. Viewers remember her connection to Dr. Grace Buckingham, the same man who stole Hope and Liam's baby years ago and sold her on the black market. Grace wasn't involved, at least not directly. But now, seeing her orchestrate a surgery under false pretenses, you can't help but wonder, did something from that twisted history rub off on her? Was this a case of a desperate doctor seizing a once-in-a-lifetime chance to do what she believed was right, even if it was illegal? Or was this a calculated con, a way to grab a quick million and vanish before anyone realized Liam had been stitched up for show? Because that's the most terrifying possibility of all, that the surgery wasn't even real. Think about it. Grace makes a small incision. She tells Bill the tumor is gone. But Liam's symptoms haven't been rechecked, no imaging has been done, and no other doctor has evaluated the results. What if she just faked it? Cleaned the scalp, made a superficial cut, sutured it closed, and walked away with the money? If that's the case, then Liam could still be dying. And no one knows. That's the cruelest twist. The other theory, the slightly less sinister one, is that Grace actually did the surgery, and she did it well. But because it was illegal, and because she had no license to perform such a procedure, she's forced to hide in the shadows while a ghost surgeon takes the credit. In that case, she'd be brilliant, and heartbroken. Accomplishing something extraordinary, but unable to stand in the spotlight. But even that version of the story doesn't explain the money. Because if it wasn't about the cash, why demand $1 million? Why not simply tell Bill the truth and ask for help covering costs? There's only one answer that makes sense. She never intended to stay. Whether the surgery was real or not, Grace was always going to disappear after this. One way or another. And now, the clock is ticking. After the operation, Grace didn't stick around long. She gave Bill a post-op plan, told him to monitor Liam closely, and said she'd check in soon. But by the next morning, she was gone. No texts. No calls. Not even the surgical center staff knew where she went. That's when things started to unravel. Back at the hospital, Finn was the first to raise a red flag. Liam's name had disappeared from the system. No official discharge. No explanation. Just gone. And that didn't sit right with him, not at all. He cornered one of the nurses, asked if anyone knew what was going on, and was met with blank stares. The last anyone had seen Liam, he was asleep in his room. Now his bed was empty. That's when Finn called Ridge, who then called Steffi, who then called Hope. And within hours, it became a full-blown family crisis. Bill, meanwhile, was trying to stay calm, or at least act like it. But you could tell he was on edge. He kept checking his phone, waiting for updates from Grace. He didn't tell anyone where Liam was. Not at first. He just kept repeating the same phrase like it was a shield: Liam's recovering. He's safe. Trust me. But no one did. Steffi stormed into Spencer Publications the next afternoon demanding answers. Hope followed soon after. And when Bill finally confessed that he'd taken Liam to undergo an unconventional surgery, the room erupted. You what? Hope screamed. You took him out of the hospital, without telling anyone? Steffi backed her up. Do you even understand what you've done? He was stable. He had a team of specialists working on his case. And you just, what, played doctor with Grace Buckingham. That name hit the room like a slap. Everyone went silent. Because even though Grace had her credentials, her calm demeanor, and a good reputation on paper, no one really knew her. Not like that. Not enough to trust her with Liam's life. Hope was the first to say what they were all thinking. You don't even know if this surgery was real. Bill didn't want to hear it. He got defensive, angry even. I watched her do it. She explained everything. She showed me scans. But when Ridge asked to see the post-op MRI, Bill's face went pale. There isn't one yet. That was all the confirmation Ridge needed. He pulled out his phone and walked out of the room, already calling the hospital's legal department. "Someone's getting held accountable for this," he muttered under his breath. "And if Liam isn't okay, it's on your head, Bill." The question of the tumor. As days passed, Liam started to come around, slowly but surely. He was groggy, disoriented, but alive. He asked questions. He remembered names. And, most importantly, he didn't seem to be in pain. But none of that proved the tumor was gone. Finn, despite being out of the loop initially, insisted on running follow-up scans. Bill hesitated. Grace had told him to avoid hospital diagnostics, at least for a while. She said inflammation could confuse the results, that it was best to wait. But now, with no word from her, he had no choice. The MRI was scheduled for the next day. And what it revealed was shocking. There was no visible tumor. At least, not anymore. The mass that had once been described as inoperable, hopeless, deadly, was completely gone. Only surgical markings remained, evidence that someone had been inside Liam's skull and removed it. Cleanly. That should have been good news. Cause for celebration. But instead, it raised more questions. Who did this? And why did they vanish? Whispers of a scam. Grace's disappearance didn't go unnoticed. Especially not by those who knew how much money was involved. It wasn't long before Wyatt caught wind of the payment. $1 million, he asked Bill over the phone, stunned. "You gave her $1 million and didn't get a receipt? Didn't even get a contract?" "I was trying to save my son's life," Bill snapped. "I didn't think I needed one." But Wyatt knew better. He'd seen it before, the desperation that blinds you. The trust that makes you vulnerable. It happened in business all the time. And now it had happened to his father, in the worst way possible. He started digging. And what he found wasn't comforting. Grace had closed her practice weeks earlier. Her medical license was still active, but she'd been moving money around, fast. Offshore accounts, encrypted transfers, burner phones. Classic signs of someone preparing to vanish. But the final nail in the coffin came when Wyatt visited the surgical center where the operation took place. He asked to see surveillance footage. At first, they refused. But once he explained that $1 million transaction had occurred under their roof, off the books, they relented. The footage showed Grace arriving with Liam on a gurney, Bill close behind. A staffer helped prep the room. No other doctor ever entered. No brilliant colleague. No miracle surgeon.